What a wonderful way to begin our morning together. Wonderful. Welcome, seriously, welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh. It is Sunday, August 27th of 2023. I am Reverend Dr. Kate R. Walker. I use the she, her pronouns, and I am truly just dancing my feet with delight as your minister. Just absolutely delighted. For those with visual disability, I am a middle-aged white female, light brown hair and a pixie cut, and I wear glasses. I'm wearing a black shirt with a flowered skirt. And you are all welcome here. And if you are watching now or in the future on YouTube, you are welcome. We're delighted that you've chosen to take this time to worship with us in community. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are of many beliefs, many origins, sexualities, and genders. We're a multi-faith religious community where all are welcome. Diversity is celebrated. Questions are expected. We're growing, we're learning, and we are loved. If this is your very first time with us, either in person or on YouTube, a special welcome. Thank you for wanting to be with us, but we would like to be in touch. If you are online, please make sure you explore our website. You've probably already found it. Just if you Google First Unitarian Church in Pittsburgh, and it'll pop up. And on that main page down at the bottom, there is a form that you can fill out to start getting our weekly newsletter. And send us an email. We would love to be in touch and have a conversation. And if you are here in person and you haven't had a chance yet, we do have a welcome desk down here in the garden foyer, and you can fill out a form and we'll start to be in conversation. And for those who want to stick around and have a conversation, there's a social hour following service. It should be just down the stairs and across the hall. Often spills out into the garden. And there's also a group on Zoom who I assume are still hanging out. I haven't heard otherwise. And if you'd like to hang out with those folks on Zoom following the service, you can get that link by sending an email to firstunitarianpittsburgh, one word, @gmail.com. We are an active and engaged and lively community. So it's fall is coming down us, and we have a whole bunch of things coming up that I want to draw your attention to. If you are a guest or a visitor, fairly new, and you would like more information, today's service, following today's service, about 15 minutes after the service, we're going to have a brief introduction to our faith, and that is grab your coffee or cookie or tea, and then it's in the priestly room, which is just down the hallway on this Mason wing, and then just bear left, wander around, you'll find us. You're welcome. So that's for introduction. And then next, 2 weeks from now, on Saturday, September 9th at 9:30 to 12, we were going to have a longer introduction for those of you who are curious. It's called Are You a UU? I know, it's cute. Are you a UU? And please register or show up, but it would be helpful if you register. You can do that either online or on our welcome desk. We'd be glad to have you. Also that weekend, we have a lot going on. September 9th as well, in the evening at 7:30, right here in this sanctuary, we have the fabulous Emma's Revolution. Just outstanding. This is a women's duo. They've been around for years. They're Unitarian Universalists, but they appeal to all audience, nationally renowned group, and just delighted to host them here. So again, Saturday night, September 9th, you can get your tickets online. There's a link on our website. Look at your newsletter. Go to their website, Emma's Revolution, and you can buy your ticket ahead of time. I think it's $20 in advance or $25 at the door. It's going to be fabulous. Very next day, September 10th, oh my goodness, we have our annual in-gathering service, kind of beginning the fall. We invite you to bring some water samples from your adventures or from your home garden or from one of our lovely rivers right here in Pittsburgh. And we will bring those waters together in an annual ritual, and we'll bless them. And we're going to hear stories from Erica and myself and a wonderful multi-generational in-gathering service, followed by our all-community picnic. So please check your emails and your newsletter to find out what to bring for the picnic. And if you don't want to bring anything, that's fine. Bring yourself. We welcome you. We always have so much food. And hot off the press, the men's group, they are going to walk down after, at noon, they're going to go down over to Walnut Street for the Shady Side Arts Festival, and everybody is welcome, all genders. Just meet at the Ellsworth door at noon, and they'll gather as a cluster of UUs. Can we wear big UU shirts? Anyways, if you're interested, Jim Wrights, would you raise your hand, is the group organizer, and all are welcome to head down to the Shady Side Arts Festival at noon following the service. Okay, we're busy people. We are busy people. I invite you to take a deep breath and arrive, embody your spirit, be here in this time, this community, this sacred space. I invite you to picture yourself connected to those who have come before us and those who will follow, to those who are also gathered in community, in places around this city, in this country. As we begin our worship together, we begin with our chalice lighting, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, a flame burning bright in our hearts and our minds. May this light inspire us to lean into the places of resistance, the places where we find transformation, where we find new adventures, community, growth, and love. Welcome. Welcome to you all. I invite you to rise as you're able, embody your spirit for hymn 131 that's in the gray hymnal, Love Will Guide Us.
Good morning. Please join me in our collective reading of our UU principles. We covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience, and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions.
Everyone here gets together and gets along so peacefully. Nobody ever argues or disagrees. We're just always so jovial. The story I'm going to tell is about a community that had difficulty getting along. And if you know this one, don't give it away. There is a small park in Australia full of trees, a little grove of trees that has a community of koalas. They've been living there since anybody can remember. And they've known each other since anybody can remember. They all know each other. They've been together for a long time. And at one point, they had some kind of disagreement. Nobody can even remember what it was, what they disagreed over, what happened. All they knew is that suddenly they were unhappy. And they stopped talking to each other, and they stopped looking at each other. And if anybody happened to catch the other koala's eye, they would growl at each other. Just didn't like each other. And nobody knew why they were all so unhappy. Well, there was an elder koala who liked to watch the community from the tallest eucalyptus tree, and he thought, I gotta do something about this. This is not gonna work. He said, I got it. We'll do something fun. We'll have a costume party. So he yelled out and announced, everybody get a costume together. We're going to have a costume party. There's going to be dancing. And the koalas got excited because suddenly they had something new to be excited about. And they all worked on costumes and came together in the night and they started dancing and there was a lot of oom-pa-pieing and drumming and they were having such a good time. They were having so much fun dancing that they made up their own really impossible dances. And you had somebody that was dressed as a knight at a round table, and somebody was dressed as a nurse, somebody was dressed as a ballet dancer, somebody was dressed as a clown, and all kinds of other costumes. And they had so much fun. And then, when it was over, the oldest koala thought, okay, this is great. Now everybody's going to be happy. Now everybody's going to get along. But then something awful happened. After the party, they realized they couldn't actually recognize each other. They didn't actually know who they were because koalas look very similar. And so, because they had not gotten to know each other in a while, they really didn't. And so the eldest koala said, okay, we gotta do something about this. He said, everybody put your costumes back on, but you're just gonna put the mask on and show a little bit of your face so that we know who was dressed as you. And everybody loved that idea. So they put their masks on. And the night koala found out that the ballet koala danced as a ballet dancer, dressed as a ballet dancer, because he had always wanted to learn how to dance. And the night koala had dressed as a knight because he had always liked the idea of helping to save people. And they found out more about each other. And after that, they remembered who they were. And they got along for another who knows how long before they started fighting.
Hello again. Every month, we share our generosity with a designated organization. This month, it is the Minister's Discretionary Fund. All donations are shared 50-50 unless otherwise designated. If you have not been a recipient of some funding from the Minister's Discretionary Fund, I can tell you that it is available to our congregation for emergencies, travel, for medical things. Our family almost needed it, and it was very nice to know that it was there. Our religious community is made up of volunteers and staff, creating and hosting a variety of programming. We rely on your financial support. In addition to the collection plate, you can donate by texting GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 412-435-1050 and following the directions on your phone. You can also check at the end of the order of service for more directions on how to donate.
I'm keenly aware that so many of you bear many sorrows and losses and grief in your hearts. I want to bear witness to them even if you are unable to name them out loud. But I do encourage you to share them. It does ease our burden when we can share. And I also recognize that we have joys, and we can bear these sorrows and these joys, the celebrations and the losses at the same time in our incredible hearts and minds. And again, I invite you to share your celebrations because we certainly need to hear about them. I invite you into a few moments of silence and prayer or meditation. Into this sacred space, we invite the spirit of love and life. We invite the spirit of courage and strength. We invite the spirit of solace and ease and healing into this sanctuary of love, of community bound together, with hearts and minds and bodies joined in common endeavor, in commitment of a shared vision of a world filled with love and healing and justice for all. Where brown and black bodies, with this disabled of all varieties of glorious human bodies, are too often feeling the grip of oppression. We seek justice. Where our climate is desperately climbing into healing and wholeness as we assault it again and again. We seek a rejuvenation of this earth in our hearts and souls and a relationship with one another and the earth. Spirit of life and love, ease our heart's lament. Help us forgive ourselves and each other. Help us build courage as we journey together. 1, 2, and 3, and 4 at a time, building strength in this joyous adventure. We are bound together. Blessed be, and amen. I invite you to stay seated as we sing 1008 in the Teal hymnal, When a Heart is in a Holy Place.
Good morning. Some of us are going to say some words about our experiences at General Assembly this past June, and I'm not Jean Schmidt, I'm E.B. Emmons. She'll be next. I think it was very good fortune for all of us that the UUA decided to hold its General Assembly in our own home city this year, and I was pleased to be one of, I think, 40 who attended from our church. 6 of us were delegates, and a number from here and from other Pittsburgh churches were extremely hardworking volunteers. And some people attended to participate in programming about justice issues, racial justice, environmental justice, international partnership, congregational governance, and investing. For delegates, a major task was to attend 2, sometimes maybe 3, general sessions each day and to vote daily on proposed revisions to the UUA bylaws proposed revision, Section 2, and amendments thereto. The goal of this process was an updating of our central definition of the covenant we make as a faith community. Amendments were proposed, and a modified package was not posted, but was put together by the convened delegates, meaning our discussion as a faith will be continued during the next year, and voting will recur in 2024 for a final document. General sessions took place in a huge convention center, our huge convention center hall, with 2,500 people sitting there attendance, and another 2,500 evidently participating virtually. The opening service on Wednesday night was led by none other than Reverend Kate and Erica and Ellen Gosian. And they did us proud. It was just, I'm sure some of you saw it because I think it was shown the morning of the next Sunday anyway. What a feeling of belonging to sing familiar hymns with so many people. Like, whoa, everyone knows this hymn and there's so many of you. And Jim McGaw also participated from the Sunny Hill Church, and that was wonderful. It was also very meaningful to me, and I imagine to others, to be present for the end of our president, Susan Frederick Gray's tenure, I guess 6-year tenure as president of the UUA, and to inaugurate and install, I guess, Sophia Betancourt, our new president, and to hear her vision for the future of Unitarian Universalism, heavily focused around justice and racial justice. The theme of General Assembly 2023 across all meetings was radical inclusion. How can we be truly welcoming to all, and particularly to people with marginalized identities? It's a question for our whole country now, but very much for the UU movement, our UU movement as well. It strikes me that each of us comes to the UU community with a rather unique story, perhaps with harms and disappointments from earlier faith experiences, or something we find speaks to us when we first discover a UU community, or something we long for that we've not found elsewhere. For me, attendance at General Assembly helped me to remember that I need to keep hearing the stories and the needs of others, like me but different than me also, and to take seriously the importance of affirming one another and acting together in the world. Our world seems to be so overflowing with injustices now. We're a community of communities with a range of identities and needs for inclusion and support. The better we acknowledge and move through our differences, the more we can bend the arc towards justice.
One highlight from the work of this year's GA is a business resolution was put forward by a group of young UUs proposing that our UU Association immediately divest what is called our Common Endowment Fund from fossil fuel-related investments and use the divested funds for reparations to Indigenous, Black, and Brown communities. While many delegates agreed with the proposers that the UUA is moving too slowly on fossil fuel divestment and reparations, many concerns were raised about the damage that would be caused to our UU movement by sudden divestment. A more detailed and thoughtful plan for reparations would also be needed before many could support this resolution. The resolution ultimately did not pass, but the issue will not be going away. And what I want to highlight here is how this all went down, what happened on the floor, and how proud I was of our UUA leaders for how they managed this challenging moment. How they affirmed the values-aligned ideas and sense of urgency coming from the young emerging leaders in our movement, even when many of us could not support the particular path being proposed. During the conversation on the floor preceding the vote, the proposers gathered in the center aisle of the hall and announced in loud voices, "We are coming forward. We are coming forward." And they did. They marched right up to the stage with signs, maybe 2 or 3 dozen people, engaging in an action, a statement of protest against the status quo that is truly not fully aligned with our values as UUs. The UUA leaders on stage did not shut them down. They stood respectfully. The spotlights on the stage were turned down and lights were turned on the activists themselves. They were seen. Their voices were heard. I got goosebumps. I saw UU delegates from around the country wrestle with this conflict in the moment. Some went forward to stand next to the young activists. Many had tears. It was not an easy moment for any of us, but it was also beautiful, because I think a lot of us recognized that regardless of voting outcome, a new generation of activists was growing before our eyes.
These are reflections from Karen Litzinger of the Causey Hills Partnership team, who did attend the General Assembly. With the General Assembly being here in Pittsburgh, the Causey Hills team was determined to host a guest from the Causey Hills Partnership. Our church proudly stepped up to support the travel of Reverend Nangroy Suting and hosted him for 10 days. The first 4 days with our church were full of stimulating conversations about the accomplishments and dreams of the school that we have sponsored since 2003. Many of you attended his heartfelt church service, and there was plenty of sightseeing that week as well. In coordinating his schedule and transportation for General Assembly, we were amazed at his intense interest for making the most of every day. Even after explaining that the afternoon business meetings would be a good time to take a break at his host home, Nangroy repeatedly opted for full days. His energy was amazing and included dancing till 11 p.m. at the opening dance party. A highlight was meeting with other international representatives from Canada, Hungary, and the European Organization. Nangroy participated in the International Roundtable and the International Reception and Service hosted by the UUA International Office. Because the international efforts of the UUA are in a state of transition, facilitating our India partner's experience was important for support and visibility. Many were surprised along the way to hear that Causey Hills has the 3rd largest group of Unitarians in the world. You might also be surprised given its remote rural location. Reverend Suting said multiple times that he cannot find the words to express his gratitude to our congregation for our support of what they're doing in the Causey Hills.
Hi, I'm Bob Mitchell from the Environmental Justice Action Team. So on Friday afternoon of GA, I was in the big exhibit hall on a sacred mission, which was to get coffee and a chocolate muffin. I was getting a little tired. Anyway, on my left, I noticed that there was a booth for an organization that I've always wanted to learn more about, which is called UU Ministry for Earth. And I'm curious how many people are kind of familiar. A few people are, yeah, thank you. So there were 2 people in the booth, including Reverend Daniel Lawler, who is the co-director of that organization. And they talked to me a bit about their mission, which is kind of broadly to support the seventh principle that we recited earlier. But they were really interested in what our church was doing, so I shared our path toward environmental justice over the past half dozen years or so, and I'll just kind of briefly share that now. Since early 2017, we've been using cottage meetings and other methods to understand what people are interested and concerned about. And over time, there's kind of 4 key things we learned. One is that we share a strong interest in social action. We think it's best to partner with justice organizations that are already doing the work. And among our diverse justice interests, 2 are especially strong, namely racial justice and action on climate and environment. And with the arrival of Reverend Kate, we decided to focus on the intersection of race and environment, which we term environmental justice. And the 4th thing is that EJ is still a very broad thing, so we probed further and we found that air quality is the top concern among many others. So accordingly, last September, we started working with a grassroots justice organization focused on air quality. You may have heard about it, Valley Clean Air Now, or VCAN. And then in April, the Pennsylvania Interfaith Impact Network decided to make environmental justice one of its areas of emphasis, also focusing on air quality. So this is really providing a boost. Upon hearing this, our church's environmental justice story, Reverend Lawler was really enthusiastic, and he asked us to submit an article for posting on their website. And a draft of that article was submitted this week. So GA brings together UUs from across the country and even the world in the case of Nangoy, as we just heard. Because of this year's GA, we're pleased to share our EJ story, and we hope that'll lead to more interaction and cooperation among congregations. So thank you.
I have such deep gratitude to all of you who not just shared your words, but your attendance. At General Assembly. It's an exciting, I think, endeavor for fairly, if you've never been to a General Assembly before. And I want to say that next year's General Assembly is going to be all virtual. They announced that, which is a very different experience. You don't get to sing hymns with thousands of other people all familiar and feeling that bonding. But the next one that is in person, it'll be multi-platform, is in 2025 in Baltimore, Maryland. So not too far from us, yeah. And that's a lovely city as well. And I want to say, I can officially announce now that Reverend Nangoy invited representatives from our church to go for a special anniversary celebration that they're hosting at the school in October. And Eleanor Mayfield and I are both attending. So I'm very excited about that. We spent 4 hours on the Byzantine travel network. I don't know how they come up, anybody comes up with a flight these days, but yes, we have our flights and we're booked. Back in 1967 to 1970, was one of the most contentious periods for Unitarian Universalist history, in our modern history, I should say. We were a relatively young association the 2 merged in 1961. So by 67, we were still just kind of stumbling along, trying to figure out how to walk. That conflict between 67 and 1970 resulted during the 1969 General Assembly, which was being held in Boston, in a mass walkout. That was the protest. In a mass walkout, several hundred lay leaders and clergy walked out in a protest. And if you want to know more about the details about that protest, you can read the history from the Reverend Dr. Mark Morrison Reed. You can just Google that. There's several articles online about that protest, but many believe that created a wound in our association, a wound that we are still feeling the impact of so many decades later, impacting our fear of conflict, that it would come to that point. And it's also a recognition that we are a community that is largely a white dominant culture, and one of the characteristics of a white dominant culture is fear of conflict. So subsequently, as Unitarian Universalists, we have not really developed, I believe, a strong skill set in how to deal with conflict. We've not been able to shift our lens to begin to recognize that conflict is always existing, it's always in our systems, and that we can lean into it and learn from it and use it as a transformative tool. Conflict within religious institutions, of course, within any institutions, but particularly religion, is not unusual. There's nothing unique or odd or ill about our association. All churches throughout history come right down to it. Christianity came out of one humdinger of a conflict, you may remember. And Protestant Reformation, there was a conflict that was a big one. More recent history is the split with Episcopalians into Anglicans. United Methodists this summer finally really split several hundred churches off. Southern Baptists, well, they had a bit of a bumpy summer. If you haven't read the headlines, I encourage you to. And my rabbi friends report that there's been more divisions within synagogues and within the general realm of all of our Judaic faith. There's more and more splits. So Unitarian Universalists having a walkout in 1969, frankly, I'm surprised it hasn't happened more often. That we haven't had more protests, which it's not unusual to have a protest, but that one was well-handled. Thank you, Jean, for raising that up. But each year that I've been a minister, I've had people come back from General Assembly for their first General Assembly, and they come back a little shocked. A little shocked. They're shocked by the culture that has been created of carefully balancing with rules, lots of rules and procedures. And I call those rules the containment field. The containment field. And it's balanced with grace. That is, when we breach the containment field. It's a careful balancing act from lessons that have at times left bitter feelings and wounds, and it's also created considerable relief. I'm pretty sure it's a slow form of torture to negotiate grammar with over 1,000 people. I have sat through plenaries before we decided to create mini plenaries for the grammarians. The need for this containment field is something that may at times feel uncomfortable, that we want to have our free expression of how we feel and what we have to say. We are, after all, a religious community. We have stunning and moving and tender worship services, and then we have bylaws and Robert's rules, and it can feel odd at times to hold both of these type of experiences in one religious movement. And yet that is what a religious denomination is, part grace and part governance. And I have to say, there are times when I have talked members who have returned with a little shock, and I've had to talk them down from their kind of misty-eyed, idealistic version of what religion should be, as some sort of a place of constant harmony. We're misusing the idea of harmony there, my beloved. Harmony is not a static place of existence. It flows and bumps and sometimes scrapes its knees. We are, after all, a covenantal religious community. And with our containment field made up of bylaws and policies and confusing procedures, and as one who creates procedures, I do not intentionally make them confusing, I swear. But we also have dedicated volunteers and very, very patient staff. And here we are, trying to create a healthy congregation. And I will point out that this particular one, First Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh, does not currently have a working active covenant. I'm going to keep nagging you until you tell me you're ready. And this is despite your own history of conflict. Mm-hmm. I know you don't want to talk about it. It's okay. A covenant is another tool in helping create that containment field, if you will. And it's critical to holding all these opinionated, sometimes rude, wise, curious, passionate, angry, fearful, traumatized, genuine, joyful people. We're balancing an ecosystem. It's marked by push and pull of the giving and receiving. I'm going to remind you last April, and if you haven't heard this, when we had guest speaker Reverend Dr. Teresa Cooley about her book, wonderful book, Transforming Conflict, The Blessing of Congregational Turmoil. It's on our website, on YouTube. Go back and revisit what she had to say. It was powerful. And she was reminding us that we can shift our perspective about turmoil and conflict and tension and recognize it's a normal part of a community and about our lives, and we can learn from it. And one of the first things we do is we become more self-aware. How do we react to conflict? When we're really frightened, when we really get to it, are we a fight, flight, or freeze person? Okay, who are the fighters? Just out yourself. The fighters, excellent, good to know. We seriously do not want an entire board of trustees filled with fighters. Okay, who are the freezers? Yeah, okay, excellent. Yep, and I'm out of here, the flight people. Yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you, appreciate that. See, we're already well step ahead of ourselves. Yeah, we've just been more aware of ourselves. Author William Ury, American author, he's an academic, anthropologist, and negotiating expert. He teaches that communities can play a crucial role in our larger society in creating these containment fields. Now, he uses the idea of third side. Rather than two sides in an argument, your containment field is a third side, a third place, where we know there's a natural existence of conflict and tension, but we provide the mechanisms, the tools, the skill set, the wisdom to manage it. The religious community is a brilliant place to shift our perspective about the inevitability of conflict. And I think Unitarian Universalists, because we hold a multi-faith space, we have some tools already built into being able to hold various ideas and ways of viewing the world. We're in a multi-faith ecosystem, which provides us so many, kind of an advanced level, I have to say, if I can feel a little egotistical here. But we need to remember to hold ourselves grounded in our bodies, to stay centered, to stay grounded, so that when we do get into this situation, we're not ready to pick a fight or respond and fight or to freeze or to get out and escape. So here's some things to remember about conflict. I'll give you a couple basic skill sets. One is, what kind of conflict is it? It is so important. What kind of conflict is it? Most conflicts are around safety, identity, or freedom. Safety, identity, or freedom. And each has their own categories. Are we trying to protect our food and shelter? Those about resources. Identity, dignity, recognition, control, sense of purpose. Or is it about freedom of our physical and mental freedom? And they intersect with each other. Once we start to identify what's happening, and it may be difficult when we're emotional, we may not be able to articulate how we're feeling and what's really at issue. It takes patience. Those emotions run deep. But I probably don't need to say that our country right now, we are way up to here in identity-based conflict. Way up to here in identity-based conflict. So why can't this congregation and all congregations begin to build the capacity to tolerate our uncomfortable feelings, right? To sit with it and be okay, I'm a little uncomfortable, but I'm going to be all right. And then build the skill set and hold spaces for people to be uncomfortable together. That containment field. The more people we have are trained and educated and courageous, we can start to have more transformative experiences. And I believe that we have a good shot at breaking old patterns, creating new ones. So new patterns might be about self-awareness, listening, curiosity, understanding the interests that people are bringing, their sense of identity, the feelings of others, and perhaps not forget to delegitimize violence as being viable state of action. Here's a story. Some of you maybe remember this or have heard about it. It was a very famous social experiment that took place in June 19th of 1954. 11 boys from Oklahoma City were put on a bus and sent 150 miles southeast to Robbers Cave Park to a Boy Scout camp. They had never met. They had just completed the 5th grade. Middle income, white, Protestant. They were given a cabin to set up bunk and asked to name themselves. They became the Rattlers. The next day, another bus with 11 boys, same demographics, never met, were given their own cabin on a different part of the camp. The two did not know about the other. The other boys named themselves the Eagles. The first week, they did their own things that you do at camp. They were swimming, they were playing baseball, they were having campfires. Their meals were staggered, so they didn't see each other. They didn't know about the other's existence for the whole first week. Those groups, they bonded, hierarchical, made their social norms. One liked to swear, the other one, no swearing, for example. They're 5th graders. Apparently swearing was what they wanted to do in one of them. So as soon as they were told about, the groups were told about the other, there's this group called the Eagles, there's this group called the Rattlers, they immediately escalated and wanted to challenge the other to a competition. Baseball, tug of war, who's the better group? And on it went, and it began to escalate through the days, and they went into winners and losers, they went into name-calling, communists, cowards. Then went into accusations of cheating. They got into raids and fist fights. The violence escalated each day, and then a justification for their violence. All of this, of course, was run by grad students who were having a hoot. And this great social experiment, classic sociopsychology experiment, the groups were largely identical, except for their names that they chose themselves, their totems. The experiment, though, ended very nicely with bringing the groups together. Thank you, grad students. They basically gave them a series of peaceable activities, focusing on common goals, and resolving a series of false crises. Water shortage, they had a supply truck problem, and the only way they could solve these crises was by cooperating and working together. And then they became the best of friends, giving gifts to each other. It's a great social experiment. I'm really glad I wasn't part of it. But there it is, that need for a common goal, that need for communication and trust. And my beloved, we have a crisis. We have a crisis, one we've created. It's called climate crisis. And we have got to start coming together with, we may need some peace-building activities where trust and self-awareness are taught, deep listening skills. We increase our curiosity about the other and not engage in name-calling or violence. Jean shared that wonderful story about the GA leadership on the plenary when the youth and young adults came forward for their action and they were honored and they were heard. But what a lot of delegates don't know, and I do because I know everybody, is that there were multiple attempts for the leadership of the UUA to engage with the youth and ask them not to put out that request. They did, because everybody knew it was going to fail, because the board was against it, the president of the UUA was against it, the financial advisors were against it. That divestment proposal was going to fail, and what they also didn't want to see is a pitting of our values of our youth up against climate. I mean, it was going to be a massive conflict, and the leadership didn't want to make anybody, put them in the position of making that choice. But the youth declined after a while of negotiating. They said, nope, we're going to do this, and moved forward. We're putting this proposal up. And then in the end, as Jean said, the proposal did fail. So why did the youth do it? They knew it wasn't going to pass. They leaned into the conflict. They chose it as a point of transformation. It was about their voice being heard. That gives me chills. They needed to be heard because they're scared. They're not scared about tomorrow, they're scared about today. I'm so proud of how our association handled that, but I'm not sure everybody understands the depth of that moment. I'm proud of this church leaning into climate justice. I'm delighted that we're continuing to support the Kazi Hills program because education, particularly for women, is one of the most powerful mechanisms for mitigating climate justice. And I'm thrilled that we've elected Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt. This week, she put out a request for all of us to reach out to every single elected official, from local mayor to city council to our president, to put pressure on President Biden to declare climate crisis a climate time, that we need to make sure that it is front and center. So here are some things that are going to happen in this church. I've invited the board of trustees to do a book study with Teresa Cooley's book with me. We're going to be doing that this fall, learning more about transforming conflict. I'm going to be inviting peacekeepers to this congregation to do a congregation-wide training on what's called de-escalation training. De-escalation training, a specific type of training, so that you feel, all of us feel, we have the skill set when we find ourselves in an escalating conflict that looks like it's headed to violence. What do we do? And how do we overcome our own fight, freeze, or flee responses? And I watch for further information, and I want to make sure that's available to everybody. And then I invite, for all of you who are leading meetings, to honor and recognize and see the patterns of conflict avoidance, and recognize the potential of conflict transformation. If you feel conflict rising in your meetings, don't step back, step in. Just name it. Invite it. Ask what's going on. Be curious. Don't avoid it. But don't escalate it either, okay? There's a difference. That 1969 General Assembly walkout was a traumatic wound for our association. It was an important step in naming, though, what happened. And in the short of it, it was a conflict about identity, race, and it was a conflict about resources, money. And we did not have the leadership or the culture to deal with that conflict at that time. We didn't have a containment field for it. We're different people now. I think we're here to build a strong, whole community where wounds can be healed, lives can be saved, and the planet can keep the human species. Wouldn't that be nice? May it be so. Blessed be. I invite you to stand as you are able, body and spirit, for 1023 in the Teal hymnal, Building Bridges.
Reach out to me.
I invite you to remain standing. As we extinguish our chalice, the words are found in our hearts as well as our order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Beloved, go forth into this world. Go forth into this world with courage, with a vision, with an idea that we can help transform the world one disagreement at a time. Go forth and return again in love. Blessed be.